At Dash, we're very aware that there are a lot of disabled artists out there that are just not getting the work that they should be getting. You know, they're still not being able to survive as living artists. As a disabled artist myself, I still face barriers as a practicing artist and a professional disabled artist. And those barriers come in all forms. They can be physical, they can be attitudinal, and they can also be totally invisible. This film is about the ArtsLabs, where we invited disabled artists to come along and to debate about the barriers that disabled artists face, and to come up with workable solutions in order to break those barriers down.
The Gandhi quote, "Be the change that you want to see," comes to mind. As the famous film director Ken Loach once said to me when I asked, how do I, as a disabled person, get into the world of cinema, said through his gloriously old-fashioned socialist terminology, it's not until the disenfranchised have their hands on the controls of the means of production that anything will ever change. And sad to say, but if we, the people who've fallen through the net, want it to change, then unfortunately we're going to have to start that change.
I made this piece of sculpture for an exhibition about 10 years ago, but it was a piece of wood and it was 2 chains and it was hung up and it said wheelchair entrance. So the barrier is that there's all sorts of entrances into buildings. Many of them are up flights and flights of stairs, and that's not considered to be a barrier. In fact, people who commission buildings are very happy to see doorways at the top of huge flights of stairs. Lots of my work is around puns, you know, using a word. So wheelchair entrance, usually the wheelchair entrance is round the rear and it's through, you know, past the skips. And through the kitchen, yeah, all that sort of stuff. So the idea was to work on this paradox about what the wheelchair entrance is. And this has been the most controversial piece of work that I've ever made, because wherever I try and put it up in a gallery, nobody will let me, because they say it contravenes health and safety, that somebody will, you know, walk into it. Yeah, absolutely. So I just thought that my contribution today on barriers will be wheelchair entrance, which means that it's not a problem for me. It's a wonderful wheelchair entrance. See, so it turns a perfectly ordinary door into a wheelchair entrance. Ta-da.
Ta-da.
The NHS, the police, the fire service, local authorities, absolutely everybody has got to deliver a disability equality scheme. There's going to be a lot of consultations going on because they have to consult with disabled people. And I think by finding out what the Arts Council is up to, and also what your district council as well as your local council, so pester them to find out what they're doing and make sure that you're a part of any consultation.
Why? Why do you want to classify yourself? Because you don't have to. And you're like, does that make me a second-class citizen in your eyes?
I would suggest that what you're saying is that those of us that achieve any kind of level of success, inverted commas, and however you perceive it, need to carry on being proud of our disability and wearing that badge with pride. Because the minute we start saying, well, no, I'm not really disabled, because you want to eat at the table, and I'm using words from a Johnny Crescendo song from 1991 and nothing's changed, it's still very much the case. You don't want to be a wannabe, you have to be proud of who you are.
Well, I used to have to wear like a brace throughout my childhood, and it made me look different and stuff. And it was like my cage, it was part of me. When they take it away, I was quite sad. When I was 16, it became part of me, so I was quite sad to lose it. And I think you do carry on through your life, mourning it. What I'm trying to say is, it affects your self-esteem. It makes you the person that makes me the person I am. So about a few years ago, about 4 years ago, I went to do a master's degree to kickstart myself creatively, because I wasn't working the way I wasn't expressing myself, I wasn't doing anything. One of the first paintings I did was myself. I looked at myself. I'd done life drawing for years, normal people, bodies and that. I wanted to do my own S-shaped spine. So I started to deal with it, and the first thing I got, this barrier, it's art therapy. And they shot that at me, and I destroyed a really good piece of work, which was a 6x4, of that kind of subject. which was incredibly personal and incredibly hard for me to do, to break down that barrier and explore my own, you know, stuff. It was like they turned the tables on me and it was my problem. And that's the barrier I find, because I am a painter. I'm trying to be honest about myself. I'm just expressing what I am, and I'm not apologetic about it. I am, you know, what I am. And yet you've got this attitude, and that's the barrier for me.
Somebody once said to me the most wearying thing about being disabled is constantly having to explain about your impairment to everybody all the time.
Yeah, justifying your existence.
Yeah.
This whole issue of networking and lack of contact with other like-minded people is happening everywhere. It's not just amongst disabled artists, and really it doesn't have to involve lots of funding. You have a space and you have something like tea or sort of nibbles or something to bring people along, because they love sort of having a social thing, a cake and a cup of tea to come along to. And you just have a room, book a room and have a regular thing.
That's a really good idea, and perhaps your local Disability Arts Forum could happily provide the room, the tea and the biscuits.
I spend so long fighting my way through the bureaucracy and, you know, I'm fighting the battles, that by the time I've won, I feel absolutely exhausted at the end of it.
You know, I was the bloke that didn't want the extra time at the school exam. You know, I don't need that. Of course I needed it. I could have passed. You know, you could have got an extra half an hour to write your bloody exam. It's silly. Just recently, though, I accepted I needed to apply to Access for Work to get a dresser, because my costume changes just weren't fast enough backstage and it was holding up the production. And I went, for the first time in my life, I accepted that it was impacting upon my professional...
I'd love to have a dresser.
And I had a dresser. You have no idea how much better the piece got overnight. One of the marketing tools I use with my disability arts practice when trying to attack and be accepted and equally valued by mainstream arts receptors is I've had to use shock tactics, because as soon as you put the D word into the title of your thing, nobody wants to know, yeah? So I put Sealboy Freak for my first show, knowing that people very much respond to the shocking word of freak. If I put Sealboy Disabled Performer, you know how many less people would have come, a lot more less people. We need to be thinking about this as well. We're good at what we do. How can we get the mainstream to value that?
And that's why there are lots of disabled artists, and I think disabled people are everywhere. But the point is to succeed, you deny it. Because some of the most successful artists of the day are in fact disabled. There's Sarah Lucas and Tacita D. But you'll never, ever see them associated with the word disabled. And that's another key point.
And Yinka Shonibari, who was shortlisted for the Turner Prize last year.
That's right.
Yeah, is a disabled artist who did actually, interestingly, work in the disability arts field probably about 10 years ago.
I exhibited with him as well.
Yeah, I think I did as well. And now he's mainstream. And we get these very interesting head and shoulder shots of successful disabled people who work in the mainstream.
You're just floundering yourself.
Well,
You don't know where to start.
Well, in the first instance, I would suggest, and please somebody, if they've got a better idea, interrupt me, you would contact your local Disability Arts Forum and ask to talk to somebody, because who'll listen and understand your problems, and have that first conversation, because I bet you, after that first conversation, the situation won't be a million times better, but it'll be a little bit better than before, and you'll have one lead to go on, and then you follow that lead.
Okay.
And then after that lead has been followed, other ones will open up. So get in touch with your local Disability Arts Network if you feel unsupported and floundering. I've used London Disability Arts Forum several times for advice, and it's been very useful to me. Now, I'm noticing a pattern here. We have to sort out all the problems.